Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pathfinder Leadership. If you're tuning in and you listened last week, you're probably thinking, am I in the right spot? Well, you are. We were operating under the name Leading Minds last week, and I told you I had ADHD, and I tend to do things very quickly without fully thinking them through, and I ended up researching and finding that there were many podcasts named Leading Minds, and what I don't want to do is to be the same as someone else or to be confused with someone else. I want it to be very unique. I mean, thus the name Pathfinder. You know, we're finding our own path and moving forward. So to further explain what a Pathfinder actually does, you know, as most people know what a Pathfinder is, but, you know, they lead the team to the correct path that they need to take. But also, from time to time, they have to blaze their own path, create a new one for the team to follow. And I honestly couldn't think of a better name, and I'm very proud of the name of this podcast, and I'm looking forward to it. So I've also changed my alias, so when you hear me refer to myself, or we're talking to guests or something like that, you'll actually hear me refer to myself as LP. So moving forward, that should be the big changes. There were some editing issues last time, and we've had our share of technical difficulties this time as well. But as we move forward, hopefully we'll get some of those kinks ironed out, and we'll be doing a lot better. So the topic that I chose for this episode is, what is a leader? Everyone has their own definition of what a leader is and their own visualization of what a leader is to them. Maybe they think of a person or a movie character, something like that. But what actually is a leader? So when you look at the definition, say in the Oxford Dictionary of a leader or leadership, etc., the leader definition is the person who leads or commands a group, organization, or country. Well, that's pretty broad, right? But when you dig a little bit deeper, there's another definition that I actually like a little bit better, and I believe it comes from Forbes. Yeah, from a 2020 article, The Many Definitions of Leadership by Forbes. They say a good definition of a leader is someone who motivates, inspires, and guides others towards a common goal. And that's absolutely true. Some more detailed breakdown, they talk about, leaders must be visionaries, or they must have a clear understanding of their desired future. And they must be inspirational. They must be motivating, empowering. They have to offer guidance and support for their team. They have to hold themselves and their team accountable for results, both successes and failures. And most importantly, I believe, is being an effective communicator. Because you can have a vision and you can have goals and expectations, but if you don't effectively communicate to your team what those goals are, how we're going to carry out the mission to succeed and reach our goals, and they don't know what the expectations are, you don't hold people accountable, you will fail as a leader. So I'm going to pose some questions this week, and if you have a journal or you have, a spot where you can open your phone up and do a note or a notepad or anything like that, I want you to contemplate these things and think about them over the next week and how you can apply some of these concepts to your life. One thing that I'm going to stress today and moving forward is taking small steps or baby steps to improve yourself, your team, or another individual. You're going to take baby steps to make things better every day. So what's the difference between a leader versus a boss? I want you to visualize, if you're not driving, if you're in a safe space to close your eyes, I want you to close your eyes and visualize this. If you're driving, please, God, do not close your eyes. But I want you to visualize 3 individuals pulling on a rope that is tied to a desk. And some of you may have seen this photo before that I'm going to describe to you. But if you have, and you still have your eyes closed or you're thinking about it, those ropes are tied to a desk. And sitting on top of that desk is another person. Now that person is not pulling the rope. That person is saying, pull. And above that person's head is the word boss. Now to me, that word has a negative connotation. And some of the people that I work with or supervise or whatever will jokingly call me boss because they know that it annoys me. And so the next thing I want you to visualize is not 3 people pulling on the rope that are tied to the same desk, but now 4 people pulling on the rope tied to the same desk. This time no one's sitting on the desk, and the person in the front of the line pulling on the rope is saying, let's go. They're all pulling in a common goal, and above the team it says leader. Now, it's a very simplistic view of the differences there, but I love it. Simple is a great thing. A lot of times we just need to keep life simple. We need to keep things simple. What I would suggest is if you're in a leadership position, whether you're just starting out or you've been in it for a long time, think back, especially if you've been in it a long time, think back of how you felt with that great supervisor you may have had, or that great leader, or that great example. Maybe you've never had an example. Think about a movie or something, someone that showed leadership qualities similar to what I've just asked you to visualize. If you haven't already, you can open your eyes. But what I want you to think about is being a supervisor or being in a leadership position is to never put yourself or send your people to something that you wouldn't do or make them do something that you wouldn't do. It wasn't so long ago that you were in the same shoes as them. So, in the law enforcement perspective, if you're not willing to go work a wreck, or you're not willing to go serve a warrant, or take care of the person that just wants to talk about what's annoying them today, or take a basic incident report, but you're willing to just continuously pass it down and never do that, are you a boss or are you a leader? Now, I'm not narrow sighted to think that, different responsibilities and different jobs, hold a lot more weight. If you're the chief or you're the regional manager or something, you may have a hard time finding the time to do that. Now, even myself, as I guess be considered a second line supervisor, I still have times where I have to tell officers like, hey, can you go answer this call, that came in, because I have other things that are going on, not because I want to sit there and watch YouTube. I'm actually trying to make their lives better. I'm trying to fix things to make the team run smoothly. But if they're tied up on something, am I going to handle it? Absolutely. And, I don't have to walk around and, well, it must be nice if we could have some people over here that would handle this so I didn't have to do it. I've heard that. You're a boss at that point. Like, if you have to do that, um, to make people feel guilty because they were tied up doing their own job, and you know you're not an effective leader at that point. Now, I will give people shit, and I do, since I said that, I do want to specify, like, there will be a button clicked on here that will say explicit. Now, in my normal life, yes, I use bad words quite often, vulgar language. Um, I clicked that not so that I could have free reign to just say whatever and be a complete, potty mouth. But occasionally it will come out, and I just don't want anybody listening to it around their children and being blindsided. So I'll try to keep it around PG 13. I just want you to know that there could be some words that come out. So if you are listening to this podcast around your children on the speaker, you might want to be careful. I'm one of those folks you don't want to put on speakerphone. Um, but what I was getting at is, as I feel like I have a good enough relationship with the people that I work with, that, and they will tell you, uh, that I give them a fair ration of shit. But I also can take it when they give it back to me. Um, so, if I do end up handling a call for them and they get back from, them being busy or something, then I will say something. I'll be like, oh man, I had to actually do this, or blah, blah, blah. They know that I am not, criticizing them for being busy. Uh, they know that I am playfully joking with them as a coworker, as, a friend, or something like that. But you have to build that relationship with people before you can do it. Um, but if you're doing it for the malicious purposes, as we talked about earlier, to make people feel guilty, then you are definitely a boss. Um, so the next thing I want to talk about is formal versus informal leadership. And interesting enough, uh, we had a patrol meeting a couple of weeks ago, and an idea that I came up with was we should start a book club within the department that focuses on building leaders within the agency. And when you look at like succession training, you know, the military does it. Many other organizations do it, where they plan for something bad to happen, or they plan for, someone's going to retire soon, so we need to make sure that the next person is ready to fall in line. So we're doing a voluntary book club where folks, we pick a book, one a month, not so it doesn't, stress people out. Now, my wife, which she can read multiple books at one time. I am not a big reader. Um, so it will push me also. And the book that I've chosen for our first time is called Lead from Any Chair. Now, I've not read it yet. I'm not going to quote it or anything like that, but the gist of, the cover that I've read of it, it's very focused on, being able to lead from a non-supervisory position just as well as you could from a supervisory position. Now, I want to make sure that if I quote somebody or anything like that, I want to make sure that I give them credit. I do not want to take credit for anything that I haven't done. So I'm going to read the name of the book, the title of the book. It's Lead from Any Seat by Andre Anca, A-N-C-A. And it looks like, it says 10 ways to get more involved in your job and make a lasting impact and advance your career fast. But, it's on Amazon. It's pretty cheap. And no, I'm not sponsored by it. I just want to make sure that the author gets the credit for it. We're going to be using that book. We're going to go through it and see if there's any usable information that we could apply not only to our lives but to our job. So as we break down these books, we're going to have a group meeting, kind of like, normal book club, and not only discuss like what we learned from it, but what can we apply. So I think the concept behind that, and I have a story to go along with it, from my days in informal leadership. I had a situation that came up, and man, it made me so mad. And I talked last week about me being a hothead from time to time, especially, many years ago. I think this has been in close to a decade now. And I really lost my temper because I felt disrespected. I felt blindsided. And I'll be honest, I showed my ass in front of several people. And I'm talking supervisors, new officers, senior people, the chief. I mean, I showed my rear end. I probably should have been written up, suspended, or something like that for my behavior. But I wasn't. And because I wasn't immediately reprimanded, and I was treated with kindness, it made me think about the way that I had behaved. Now, not every person will do that, so you kind of have to know your audience, if that makes sense. But he gave me time to stew on what had happened, and a few hours later, I called my chief and I said, listen, I'm sorry for the way I acted earlier. That was very unprofessional. Like, I was just super mad, and this person, disrespected me, blah blah blah. I started going through the whole story, like how I felt, and he said, "You don't understand how much what you say affects other people." I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm not a supervisor. I'm not a sergeant. I'm not anything." And he said, "You don't have to have rank to be a leader." And he said, "There are people in this agency that listen to you, including supervisors, including myself from time to time, and look to you for leadership. I want you to think about that in the future." And of course, it made me feel like, oh, so and so's disappointed. That's worse than getting yelled at sometimes, and I didn't really process what he was saying till many years later when I became a supervisor. And you look to folks for help, and looking for people to step up, and with the staffing shortages and all of the hell that has gone on, especially in North Carolina and all around the nation since COVID and Helene and all sorts of everything else that has happened. Um, you get beat down and you get tired of telling people to step up. And me personally, like, I'll ask you to step up a few times, but eventually I'm just going to do it myself. If I have to just constantly berate you to get you to help, you know I save the time and just do it myself. Is that the proper way to do things? No. No, you have to hold people accountable. And over the years I've learned. And am I perfect now? Absolutely not. But building those informal leaders within your company or your agency are absolutely crucial to success. You know, Many times in law enforcement or in leadership, especially in law enforcement, your sergeants are the persons or the that are going to push the vision out and make sure that it succeeds. And if you don't have buy-in from your first line supervisors, or in business, your managers, your lower level managers, which one thing you'll notice about me is I don't refer to people as subordinates. I know that can be the proper term, but I think it gets used in a negative connotation. And I'm not a super sensitive person. I know it may seem that way when I said, boss kind of gets under my skin, and subordinate. Um, if you haven't clued in, I've had problems with authority my whole life, and yet I became a police officer, and um, I'm now a supervisor. So wild, huh? So I try not to refer to people as a subordinate, or you know anything that would make them feel worse about or make them feel degraded. Like, they're playing an important role, and if they're not treated with the respect that they deserve, and you heard me talk about it in the first episode, like, I don't believe in karma, but I do believe in treating other people the way I wanted to be treated, and I would like to be treated. The golden rule, right? So I want to make sure that those folks feel that they're loved and respected the same way I would want to feel loved and respected. So now that I've danced around that whole thing, the whole moral of the story was to build the you know succession training within your agency, your department, your office, or whatever it is. So to give you a visualization with this, there's my brain damage coming back in. Um, I want you to think about, you're a supervisor, whether you're a supervisor or not, but you're looking out and you have 10 people that you supervise. They are, you know, your responsibility. And of those 10 people, you have 7 people that are middle of the road. You know, they're not high achievers, and they're not doing just enough to not get fired. I mean, they're good average employees, right? Next, you have a couple of people that are just barely skating by, just enough to where, you know, they're teetering on the line of being fired, or have been written up multiple times, or etc. And your next group is your high achievers. people that you can count on, people that, no matter what their workload is, they're coming to you, hey, what can I do to help you? Is there anything else I can take on to move forward? Any classes you can recommend that I could go to better myself or this agency? I mean, they're constantly just, it's like they have an insatiable hunger to do better and to help out, and that's amazing, right? But what if you took the information that you received, not just from this podcast, but applying yourself into self-improvement and taking some of these leadership concepts? What if one of your employees did that, right? One of your middle of the road or even bottom of the barrel employees decided one day, you know what, enough's enough. I'm not going to be average. I'm not going to be the lower level. I'm going to be the absolute best. They don't tell you about it. They don't proclaim that they're having this huge life change and they're going to be the best. They just show up one day and make little changes to make themselves better. They take a step one day in the right direction. And then the next day, or maybe a week down the road, they take another step. And they begin to turn that into almost muscle memory. Those things that they're doing better, they're able to just take on more, and it snowballs as it moves forward. You, as that supervisor, should be keenly aware as those greater changes begin to happen, and you should take notice of that. You need to encourage that person. Whether they like public recognition or whatever their quote unquote love language is, let them know that they are seen and that they are appreciated, and you see the hard work they're putting in and you appreciate it, and that will encourage them even further. If you light that fire in someone, they're going to keep going. Now, imagine that person is that you told them they're doing a great job, they're doing better, you can see the change, and now they begin to want to take on more responsibilities, more than what they had done before. And you think, well, I'm going to put this new person with you and let you kind of train them up, see how they do. You put that person with them, and then all of a sudden, they're still getting their work done, but on top of that, they're training this new person, and this new person is picking up the concepts, and it's beginning to click with them, and you're seeing that leadership come out. It's as simple as that, folks. Day at a time, a step at a time. Work on improving yourself, making those things that might seem impossible. Take it, as my wife says, a bite at a time. Bite at a time. A day at a time, baby steps, and move forward. Life is going to knock you back. Hell, it might knock you down. But you, from day one, you have to have the mindset of, you might knock me down, but you will have to kill me to get me back up. There are definitely times in this job and even in life that I've wanted to quit. I've wanted to be done. And I will bring my wife on later, and not on this episode, but in later episodes, and interview her to get her perspective as not only a law enforcement wife, but she has some very unique insights in self-improvement and life coaching and things like that. But she will be able to tell you some of the struggles that she's seen from me. And even though I want to quit, I won't do it. So I keep pushing. And it can drive her crazy and it can drive me crazy, but I want to see it finished. I want to see all of the hard work that I and others have put into something be completed to my vision, right? So, informal leadership is definitely a crucial thing. I mean, if you have people that aren't wanting to get into things and they're not wanting to better themselves, don't, I mean, those, you can try to encourage them, but the motivation has to come from within. And your formal leaders, being you as a supervisor, you hold a position already, but you have to actually earn that trust to be an effective leader. You have to be personable. You have to be able to be competent in what you're doing. You have to follow through with things when you say you're going to do them. Some of those characteristics that we talked about earlier, you have to stand by what you say. The whole standing on business. You got to stand on business. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be serious all the time. I feel that in our job in law enforcement, shit's hard enough, right? So to sit around and be serious constantly, I can't stand that. Like, I want to lighten the mood. I want to make things a little happier. Now, when we're on scene and we're dealing with a bad situation, probably not going to do that. We're going to be serious and we get the job done. But when we get back, we debrief, stuff like that. We're going to shoot the shit, have a good time, kind of lighten the mood up. Because, man, it's hard enough to think about all the things and the internal BS that goes on without also having to feel like you got to walk on eggshells because everybody's got to act angry all the time. Nobody wants to work with somebody that's angry all the time. I can go ahead and tell you that from personal experience. It's a hard road to hoe. So the next thing I want to talk about is, are leaders born or are they made? I'm going to tell you my opinion on that. I think that everyone is born with certain qualities that can be enhanced throughout their life. But I think true leadership are kind of forged from the crucible of their own life experience. You can teach somebody something, and teaching concepts is fine, and that's part of what we're doing here. Teaching concepts, but also we're talking about the application of it. How can you take that concept, look at your own life experience, make that concept your own, and then apply it to your life? So, again, just like with dreams and vision, if you don't have any legs underneath it, it's not going anywhere. So the same thing is true with, concept versus application. We talked last time about, the little news article that was made about me with the newspaper. Yay, that was, it was cool. It was interesting. But with my personal life, I have seen a lot of shit, and I've been through a lot of shit, and I say that not to be like, well, my life has been horrible, pity me, look at me, blah blah blah. But I have made the conscious choice to not be a piece of shit because my life was bad. I have made the conscious effort to be better than what the circumstances of my childhood or something else may have dealt to me. And though I've had some struggles in my life and I've had some hard things that I've dealt with, and I will still deal with. I will deal with in the future. Um, I am able to use that, and I think that you all should be able to use your own personal um, struggles and everything else to be able to apply leadership concepts to people and to be able to relate to people. Because if you can relate to people and they like you and they can see like, well, that's not just a sergeant or a supervisor. That is a person. And that person has seen some stuff. And I respect them the way that they're handling it, the way they're being open and honest about it. And I like the way they do things. And I want to learn from them. I want to follow them. So keep that in mind. You know, talking about be careful what you share with people and things like that. There are times you have to be careful with that, but you can also share feelings. You may not have to go into specifics, but you can share some feelings and be relatable without telling everything. Especially in law enforcement, despite popular belief from some folks, we actually do know when people are full of crap, you know. And when you tell us a lie, we know. We know that you're lying. So, but we can also read between the lines. Does that make sense? So if you're hinting on to things, you know, with people, if you don't want to tell your whole story, cops are pretty keen to be like, okay, I see where you're coming from. I get it. You don't have to say any further. But I appreciate even that level of vulnerability to be able to share. Now, I'm pretty well an open book with just about anybody. I'm obviously much more open with my wife about things, my daughter, but I'm pretty open. I am much more transparent sometimes than people want. Uh, you're going to hear how I feel, what I think, and you know what I've been through, because I use that as, you know, part of the way that I've built who I am, and my personality and the way that I do things is all created from what I've been through, the wisdom that I have. So the final thing I want to talk about while we're talking about, you know, we touched on some of the things throughout about fear and you know, different leadership styles, etc. But the final thing I want to talk about when it talks about, you know, what is a leader and how to be a leader and all those things is fear. Especially in law enforcement and military. When I went through basic law enforcement training, I was super afraid. There's so many things that will kill you. You get sued, or you're going to go to jail, or you're going to blah, 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 blah. And, you know, or I'm going to go to this domestic and somebody's going to be waiting for me and they're going to shoot me, or whatever it may be. And, you know, 20 years ago when I went through, there was definitely a mindset of you're just going to suck it up. You got to get in there and handle it. It's still true to this day, but you're not sucking it up. All right? Everyone who has been in this job or in the military or something, they have experienced fear. Now, as we apply that to, you know, outside of law enforcement, military, first responders, etc., I want you to think about there are other kinds of fear that may not be violence or something like that. One of my biggest fears that I have is fear of failure. And it comes, fear comes in many shapes and forms. Um, but what I'm getting at with this is you have to use that energy when you're fearful of something and you hold on to it and you harness it and you use it to accomplish your task and to overcome that fear. You know, I've I've been a part of SWAT teams and dynamic entries into homes and flashbangs and all the cool stuff you see on TV. It's scary. It's scary every time. I've been doing it 20 years, but I don't. Hey, buddy. Little Rupert's here with me, my little emotional support companion. Come here, buddy. But every time you harness it and you say to yourself, I'm going into this, I'm giving it all I've got, I'm coming out of this alive, this is how I'm going to handle it. So don't lie to your people that you're going to lead and supervise and say, don't be afraid, it's fine. It's okay to be afraid. But what you also have to look at is how you manage it. Is it fight? Is it flight? Or is it freeze? You have to be able to train your mind to overcome that fear and to push forward. The same can be said in the world of business or in life. If you're scared of something, identify it, understand it, give it its due recognition. My fear of failure. My fear of failure comes from many things, but one that really stuck with me, probably one of the hardest ones, was, and I'm going back to basketball again. I really like playing basketball, and I like talking about it, apparently. Was in 7th grade. I went out for the middle school basketball team and made it to the last. It's between me and one other guy. Great dude, one of my friends. He's I guess second in command in the sheriff's office now. But he beat me by 1 point, and he made the team, and I didn't. They only had a certain amount of spots, and it crushed me. I mean, I remember going out behind the gymnasium and just crying my eyes out. Same thing happened the next year. Lost by 1 point or whatever it was, and I didn't make it again. Crushed again. So the fear of failure is major for me. And when I go to take tests or I'm putting in for a promotion or whatever it may be, I go all in because I can't stand failing. So, but I understand where it comes from. I identify, what it is, and then I use that energy, even when I fail. I mean, I failed to get a promotion 7 months ago. It turned out to be a good thing in the long run. I didn't see it at first, and it really hurt me at first, but in the long run, I really think it's going to be the right move. But you can use that fear and harness it and achieve greatness. Think about, the adrenaline dump that you get with fear and excitement and all that stuff. And the more you get used to, okay, that's what this is. I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to utilize this to push myself forward. So, what I want you to focus on this week, take your journal, open it up, and I want you to put things to focus on. What are your leadership qualities? What do you possess right now? If we're looking at the ground floor of this building, what do you possess right now? It's not something that you've dreamt up in your mind, but other people have actually told you that you possess that are similar to those leadership qualities that we talked about earlier. It doesn't matter if it's just one. That's fine. If you don't have any of them, that's okay also. Remember, we're taking the first step today. We're taking these baby steps every day to get better. So if you don't have any, start today. The next part I want you to think about is, what can you do tomorrow to make yourself better? Okay? The final thing that I want you to write down are, what are your fears? Now, most people are scared of bears and lions and tigers, oh my, from the Wizard of Oz. But lions and tigers and bears, yeah, that's what it was. Anyway, sorry. So I don't want you to list, I'm scared of snakes. I'm scared of, tight spaces. I want you to think more of what scares you in life. What scares you in your job? And you can make 2 columns and do personal and professional. You don't have to tell these to anybody. But I want you to identify them. And I want you to think about them. And I want you to understand where they come from. So do that this week. And I'm going to leave you with this. As we talk about what is a leader and potentially becoming a leader, whether it's formal or informal, like I said earlier in the podcast, I talked about wanting to give people the proper credit. If you find out where this quote actually comes from, please let me know. But I've heard it say it was a Chinese proverb or a Japanese proverb. I've seen it quoted in different things, but this is the quote. When a tiger dies, it leaves behind its skin. When a person dies, they leave behind their name. So moving forward, I want you to think about this. We tell our officers, when you look down at your badge, that symbolizes the oath that you swore to your community and to your nation and to God and, your fellow officers, etc., that you would uphold the Constitution, etc., and the law, enforce the laws and everything. I'm not going to quote the entire oath of office. But the next thing we tell them, and it's directly after that, is the name that is on the right side of your shirt is you representing your family, yourself, and it's going to be your legacy moving forward. So today, let's start building that legacy. You may be brand new. You might be new to the job. You might be new in your career. You might be old. But when you're retired, when you pass away and you get put in that pine box, or you get, cremated, or whatever it may be, buried in a root ball of a tree, the only thing that's going to last on this earth is going to be the stories that people tell, the love that you've shown people, the kindness, the acts of charity, and the good, good times and funny stories that they had with you. So, how are you going to be remembered? And if you look at it, and I've had to have this gut check moment in the past where I've looked at it and be like, I'm not going to be remembered very well. Um, Work on it. Nothing is insurmountable. Step by step, day by day, and as my wife says, a bite at a time. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Again, I appreciate it. We were at like 40 views for the first episode. Let's get them up to 80 to 100. Remember to like and follow the podcast. Again, I'll try to get a YouTube channel posted up as soon as possible. Might be this week, might be later. But love each other up. Love yourself. Give yourself grace. And I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you back here next week. Thank y'all again for tuning in. Stay safe. God bless.